Welcome to Downshift, my name is Matt. Now a couple weeks ago, I was out in San Diego with the entire Honda team to take a first look at the new 2026 Honda CRV. I showed you the 15 things that I thought you should know, but now I'm back home, and thanks to my friends at Russ Darrow Honda of Milwaukee, I spent a little bit more time with the car, and I want to show you everything, the best and the rest. Let's get into it. But first we're going to cover what's new for 2026. Now 26 is technically a facelift year, but you couldn't really tell just by looking at it. It's not really an issue for me though, I still think it looks one of the best in the class. You got a couple new bits and bobs for this year though, including some new colors, the ash green that we tested out in San Diego. You got a couple new tech items on your sport touring and throughout the lineup. But the big news for 2026 is the addition of the TrailSport trim, which is what we had the pleasure of testing out in California, and we've been driving around back here in Milwaukee. So thank you again to the Honda team for having me out in California, and thank you to Russ Darrow again for letting me take another go in the TrailSport. Now the TrailSport is built on the Sport trim. It gets style accents like the grille garnish and the faux skid plate garnish underneath in the front and the rear. You've also got unique wheels and tires. It's a gunmetal finish 18-inch wheel with a Continental cross-contact ATR tire. They've also beefed up the real-time all-wheel drive for better low-speed traction for this year. They developed that for the TrailSport, but it was so good that they rolled it out to the rest of the lineup. They've also got a downhill assist control on your TrailSport between 2 and 12 miles an hour, which is pedal actuated, which is really nice. And the TrailSport gets black window treatments, door handles, tusks, etc. You've also got a black rear wing and some badging on the back. And on the interior, you get a black cloth interior with some orange detailing and TrailSport embroidered into the headrests. The TrailSport also gets all-season rubber floor mats as standard and TrailSport orange ambient lighting in the footwell, in the door handles, and in your wireless charger. You've also got a heated steering wheel, a powered trunk, and 8.2 inches of ground clearance, although that's pretty standard for all of them. Now the CRV is generally a pretty normal, typical vehicle, but there are a couple little funky odds and ends that I think we should cover. Now one, again, this is the TrailSport that we're in, and the TrailSport only comes in the Hybrid. It's one of the only off-road-esque trims that you can get in this class with the Hybrid. You're not going to get it on the CX-50 Meridian, you're not going to get it in a Subaru Forester Wilderness, and so on, Nissan Rock Creek, etc. But since this is the Hybrid, not only do you have drive, but you also have B mode, which is like a regeneration mode or regenerative braking mode, and you've got these paddle shifters here to dial in more or less regen. And as you're recouping and deploying power, you can keep track of exactly what the state of charge is on your battery right here with this little gauge. There's no engine temperature or transmission temperature type gauges, but you do have that little gauge to keep an eye on some stuff. And just like the last few years, you've got your drive mode toggle down here. It makes the fun Honda sounds. And you've got 4 different modes: Snow, Econ, Normal, and Sport. If you do go for the Sport Touring for 2026, you'll also get an individual or customized mode for your drive mode here. But then zooming back out and talking about the pros and cons, we'll start with the cons first. And just like last year and since 2023, as opposed to rivals, the CRV is just missing a couple little features. It's still missing a head-up display, it's still missing cooled front seats, it's still missing heated rear seats, although that's fairly rare for this segment. You also don't have a panoramic roof option no matter how much you spend, and you don't have a 360 camera. You also don't have a digital rear view mirror. But for 2026, they have introduced a couple things. You do get a faint amber glow in terms of ambient light, which is something we complained about last year, so that's a nice addition. And you have a fully digital cluster in front of you, which is nice and makes it feel a little bit more modern. So some improvements, but still lacking a couple little things. And if we're going to mention rivals, we should also mention that some of the rivals are bringing a powertrain that's missing here on the CRV. And this one's a little bit of a mystery to me because I know they have it in their lineup overseas, and it's a plug-in hybrid. Now the CRV hybrid that we have here gets a 1.4 kilowatt-hour battery pack, which is big enough to add power and act as a normal hybrid. However, a lot of the competitors like the Tucson, the RAV4, and the Sportage all get plug-in hybrid options to help them bridge the gap as we move to EV. Of course, this is more of a statement to the general lineup rather than the TrailSport or off-road specific trims of these vehicles. Now the interesting thing is over half the CRVs that are sold today are the hybrid rather than just gas, so that's great to see. And I would expect then, as this gets an entirely new generation in a few years from now, we would see a plug-in hybrid to bridge that gap between a normal combustion CRV and something like a fully electrified Prologue. Now we also need to talk about real-world fuel economy. Now it's rated on the hybrid anyway for 40 in the city and 34 on the highway. And that's probably true in ideal conditions. Now when I let the car warm up and we did our Lakeshore Loop fuel economy test, I got about 36.3 mpg. Pretty decent, still a little bit less than the RAV4 hybrid in the real world. However, We bought our 2023 Sport Touring Hybrid in December, and that car does not like the cold. It also does not like speeds above 70 miles an hour. In the winter months, my wife was getting about 23 to 26 mpg on her 100-mile commute to and from the studio when she would go in. Now here, obviously in the summer months, it has warmed up a bit, but it's the all-wheel drive system that seems like it really doesn't like the highway speeds. Also, the all-terrain tires on our TrailSport is going to make the car a little thirstier. Now, to be fair, around the city, this thing is much more efficient. Never quite as efficient as a RAV4 hybrid, but I can still get around 40 mpg or even better at times, depending on where I'm going, for little trips around town. So it's not like it's inefficient, it's just a little less efficient than some of the other rivals, but it's also a lot more refined. So there's a pro to that we'll talk about later. And unfortunately, we are going to talk about price on the con side of the video. Now, a normal CRV non-hybrid starts at about $31,000. If you want to go for a hybrid, it's going to cost you about $34,650 plus destination to start. That's several grand more than the cheapest RAV4 hybrid, or at least that's true before the new generation RAV4 comes out. Now, if you want to go for this TrailSport with the hybrid, that starts at almost $39,000. But if this is still lacking a couple features and you want all the bells and whistles, you can get into a Sport Touring at around $42,250. That just makes this CRV generally a little bit more expensive than most things in the class here, especially when you're dealing with the hybrid. But with that said, there's plenty of things to love about the CRV, so let's talk about those things. And one of my favorite things about the CRV is the hybrid. Now, I recognize that I complained about it quite a bit earlier in the sake that it's not super efficient, at least compared to some of the rivals. But it's a very good system here. You get a 2-liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder with some VTEC, 145 horsepower, 138 pound-feet of torque from just the engine. You got 2 electric motors. This is Honda's 2-motor hybrid system with a 1.4 kilowatt-hour battery that's feeding into the motors. Those motors, 181 horsepower, 232 pound-feet of torque. That's the output you're getting most of the time. But a combined output is going to be about 204 horsepower and 247 pound-feet of torque. The 40 mpg in the city, 37 on the highway. We did our Lakeshore Loop, about 36.3 mpg. That was in January, so it'll be a little bit better here in the summer. But 0 to 60 is good for about 7.4 seconds. But the thing that I like most about this hybrid system is just how refined it is. You can think of this honestly more as like an EV, but instead of being fed by an enormous battery that you plug in and charge, it's being fed by a gas generator. That means when the engine turns off and turns back on, there's no big kick in torque that you feel. It doesn't sound like the engine turns on and then immediately is just like humming and vibrating and just this coarse Toyota sound. You don't get that like you do in the RAV4. It's proper luxury tier here. It's also going to be really reliable, just the architecture and construction of this powertrain. And the silver bullet is the TrailSport here is the only off-road trim that's offered as a hybrid. I think I mentioned that before, but it's worth mentioning again. So overall, I like the hybrid system. It's not the most efficient hybrid, but it's the smoothest, it's the most luxurious, and it's just good. And another thing I love about the CRV, and one of the reasons that my wife and I ended up buying one, is it looks good. Now for 2026, they've added a couple new colors. There's 8 colors now, and the ash green pearl that we tested out in San Diego is the new color and is exclusive to the TrailSport. Now, this is slightly facelifted for this year, but other than colors, this is technically, like I mentioned, a facelift year, but you couldn't really tell from the rest of the styling. But it is still a super clean, modern design. You get black accents for the hybrids, as well as this TrailSport that we have here. We've got a bold black gloss grille with the TrailSport designation. We've got a silver lower valence here. We've got LED headlights, reflector style, and if you don't go for the TrailSport, there's a couple new wheel options. There's a new 18-inch wheel for your Sport and maybe even your Sport L, but the Sport Touring gets the same 19-inch wheels. The profile, though, is still clean. It's boxy, and here on the TrailSport, we have black accents like we talked about before. And the rear design looks pretty much identical from last year, although with the TrailSport, of course, you get some additional badging that says TrailSport. You get a black wing back there, and you get some skid plate-esque garnishes in your rear bumper. But leave it down in the comments what you think of the look of the CRV, and if there's anything else in the class that you think looks better than it. CX-5, CX-50, Tucson, Sportage, RAV4, Forester, and alike. But I do want to take a minute to talk about the ride and dynamics. We talked about the incredibly smooth hybrid system, and that's true. It's probably the smoothest in the class. It's certainly the smoothest in the class. But you also have great steering, and especially on my wife's Sport Touring, where we don't have the big Continental Cross Contact ATR all-terrain tires, the steering is fantastic. The damping profile and the ride refinement is probably the best in the class. You get a nice natural braking feel, that blended braking, even when the friction brakes come in. It is certainly the best in the class behind the wheel. Now the TrailSport does undo a little bit of that with these tires. It's a little bit firmer, it's a little bit more road noise coming into the cabin, but still, even with these tires, I think this still certainly rides better than a CX-50 hybrid, and really a lot of the others in the class too. So it's a great package here altogether. And it's not going to surprise anyone when we start talking about trunk space on the positive side of the video. You get a powered tailgate even here on your TrailSport, which is a great touch to see, and then you're looking at about 39 cubic feet of space or thereabouts. The seats do fold 60-40, you have to reach up to the seat backs, but it's still pretty convenient. And then with the seats down, you're looking at an enormous 75 or 77 cubic feet of space, depending on whether or not you go for a hybrid trim. It's not a totally flat floor, and there's no underfloor storage, and there's no spare tire. So there are a couple little drawbacks, but in terms of actual space and packaging, and if you want to fit the most stuff in the back of your car, you want a CRV. And I do think there's a lot to be said about the quality and the overall interior experience that you get here in the cabin. Now there's still several interior colors, but they are locked depending on what exterior color you go for. For example, we have our Canyon Blue River metallic paint CRV at home, and that means we can only get the black interior. But even here in your TrailSport trim, which is based on the Sport trim like we mentioned, you get heated seats, you get a heated steering wheel. And the dash design is very similar to the Civic and the HRV, which is to say that it's clean and pretty modern. You do have physical climate control. They're the knurled silver plastic dials, and they really have a satisfying click to them. Now here on your TrailSport, the black cloth interior with the orange stitch is the only interior option you're going to get, but you do get a leather-wrapped shift boot and a leather-wrapped steering wheel. So overall, there's not a huge amount going on like you would see in a Kia or a Hyundai, but everything that you do see is pretty quality, and that's kind of what I want from a Honda. And when it comes to the rear seats, again, we've got something that feels pretty best in class. These are truly some of the biggest in this segment. I have a huge amount of knee room, plenty of headroom. I've got vents back here. I've got USB-Cs. I do have a single map pocket on the passenger side. There's no rear sunshades, there's no heated seats, and there's no panoramic roof. So it's not perfect. It's missing a couple things that some rivals have, but in terms of, again, space, same thing with the trunk. If you want the most space and some of the most comfort, right here. Now, when we talk about technology, I know we complained about a few things that this doesn't have earlier in the video, but they have made some improvements for this year, so I think they deserve some roses for that. Again, we talked about the fact that it doesn't have a head-up display, but you do have a fully digital instrument cluster now, which is great. And you get a 9-inch infotainment system as standard. You get wireless Apple CarPlay, wireless Android Auto, wireless charger, so it is a truly wireless experience, but if you want to plug in, you still can with a USB-C. You're not going to get a 360 camera, but your Sport Touring now has the big screen with Google and Alexa built in. Your safety suite, your Honda sensing is decent. It's not a leader, but it's still convenient enough to be helpful. Things like the adaptive cruise and the lane keep assist, they're not perfect, but they are good enough to still be helpful. But the new big screen, and if you want to go for the Sport Touring and have the Google and Alexa built in, that's a nice touch. The fully digital instrument cluster, that's a nice touch. And one of the things I complain about on our 23 Sport Touring is it seems like there's a film that seems to affect the colors, especially in CarPlay. That seems to be a little bit remedied here for 26. So some improvements to be sure. Hey guys, real quick, Matt here. Just wanted to say I hope you've been enjoying the video. If you have, would really appreciate you hitting that subscribe button. I know it doesn't seem like a big deal, but it does go a long way in helping us get access to cars sooner and get access to manufacturer engineers so we can get more information on the cars and get you more information so you can make better decisions. So would really appreciate you hitting that subscribe, like, comment, the whole YouTube thing. But with that, let's get back to the video. Honda CRV, TrailSport Hybrid. We took this thing on the track, so if you're interested in the performance of this thing, go watch that video. I'll have it linked in the description below. We're actually going to flip it back into normal and just talk about this thing overall. It's kind of like a final thoughts catch-all. Now, I know in our, 15 best or 14 best things about the 2026 CRV, we talk a lot about the TrailSport. And even in this video, we talked quite a bit about the TrailSport. And I do think it is a sensible thing to add. All of the competitors are bringing an off-road version. Toyota's got their Woodland, Subaru has their Wilderness, Nissan has their Rock Creek, and so on. Mazda with their Meridian. So it is sensible for Honda to bring this. And it's also, I think, sensible to bring it as a hybrid. I think that's really nice. I think the CRV in general is at its best with the hybrid. There's a little bit more fuel economy. There's significantly more fuel economy as long as you don't go on the highway. There's a bit more power. There's a lot more refinement. Sorry, I'm tripping over my words. It's like 90 degrees today. Your boy's not built for that. So I think the TrailSport as a product makes sense. Is it the most hardcore off-roader? No, but we also saw that it's going to be hardcore enough for people that are honest with themselves. Obviously, if you're looking at like a Bronco or a 4Runner or a Jeep, this is not going to replace those things. This is certainly a soft roader. But obviously, we saw it tripoding well. They retuned the all-wheel drive system, really, really good, especially at low speeds, which is nice here in Wisconsin in the winter when it snows. I think it's a smart and clever package. Now, outside of the TrailSport, the CRV is one of the more expensive options in the class, and it is missing a couple things. Some of the stuff is ticky-tacky, like I don't really, like you can buy aftermarket little shades to put on the windows with little suction cups. I don't really need heated rear seats, but it would be nice to have a 360 camera when you go into reverse. Pretty much every other competitor, even Subaru, is bringing something like that. So there's a couple things that it's missing, but for the money, I still think this is one of the best all around. It's really, I cannot say enough good things about this hybrid system. It's really, really refined, especially in the city. It's really efficient. I think if you don't go for all-wheel drive, it'll be significantly more efficient at highway speeds. My parents have an Accord hybrid, which is the same two-motor hybrid system, and that's significantly more efficient on the highway. It's still going to be more susceptible to temperatures, so there are other brands and other products that are better at things. The Toyota RAV4 hybrid is better at things, like being efficient. But I think overall, as a package, my money feels like it went the furthest potentially in a CRV. The build quality, the longevity, the feeling of just like solidity, just like this is a quality item, I get pretty highly here, more than something in like a Sportage or maybe even a Tucson, although those are nice too. I think what I'm trying to say in a really roundabout way is this is a good product. There's a reason that they sell so many of these. It's good. It's good full stop. If my wife didn't do 100 miles on open highway at 75 miles an hour every day, or when she goes into work, I'd buy this again. Or maybe I'd buy it in front wheel drive. I don't know. But no, it's very, very good. We've had our CRV hybrid for 6, 7, 8 months or however long it's been now, and no complaints. So thank you again to Honda for having me out in San Diego to do a first drive. Thank you to Restero in Milwaukee for letting me have another go in this and spending some more time so we could make this video. And thank you to you for watching. We'll see you in the next one.